Hello and welcome to the World-Struction podcast. I'm your host, Alex.
And I'm your co-host, Levi. Better in every way.
Well, that's not fair. But Levi, there's something special about today. You know what's special about today?
It's my birthday?
No, it's not your
Oh.
birthday. No, what's special about today is for the first time ever, we're having a guest.
Yes, hello.
No, shut
Well,
up. No.
I don't think it's very impressive.
I beg to differ. I think this is impressive. I think we're the best, and there's no arguing about it. So you guys ready? You ready for this? Let's start this. We're
Hello,
recording.
my name is Chris the Pirate. I am the guest today.
Okay.
Good to meet you all.
Okay. So far, okay.
Are you based out of the Caribbean, or where do you?
Yaman.
All right. Well, so like I said, this is the World-Struction podcast. This podcast helps to teach you about world building, and fingers crossed, we hope you have as much fun as we have about talking about this stuff. So let's get started. We got some real questions for you, Chris. We got some real questions for you. The main question is how do you world build? How do you begin?
So the biggest thing for me when I'm world building is, and Levi kind of described it very well in your previous episode, as I like a sandbox on rails kind of approach, or where I'll design encounters that I think are interesting, that will challenge my players, not necessarily just mechanically, but maybe in a social or moral sense that I find interesting, or will develop a dynamic that I find interesting.
Okay.
And I will collect these and hold them in my bag of tricks, and then deploy them as I see fit in sort of the quantum ogre strategy.
Okay. Quantum ogre.
Yeah, could you?
Sure.
Could you
For those of you in the audience who aren't familiar with the quantum ogre, the idea behind the quantum ogre is you have a dungeon with 3 doors in it, and you give the players a choice of which door to choose. But in reality, every single door has the ogre behind it, no matter which door they choose.
Like Schrodinger's cat got revenge.
Yes. But not in the sense that I want my players' choices not to matter. Like in a situation, if I find that the players are being callous, if the players are being too prideful, or they're getting ahead of themselves, I'll make it harder on them. Or if they do a good job of being careful and mindful and of the world and things like that, then I won't make the challenges as hard. But there always has to be a challenge, and I think it's important.
So it's like you built the roller coaster, but they decide whether or not they strap in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, that's a really good analogy. I'll give you props for that.
Thank you. So,
What, are you okay? Did you just have a stroke?
Yeah, I had a mild aneurysm.
Just a mild one.
Yes, that's.
There was something that you said, and I'm trying to remember, but I'm going to be honest, I zoned out.
That's on brand.
That's on brand. So we're going to move on. The next question I have for you, Chris, is
Alex.
I know I'm dropping the ball. Don't worry. Okay. All this is getting cut out.
All right. Well, hold on. So, Chris, you brought something up that I still really want to talk about.
Yes, tell me.
Since Alex seems to be having an aneurysm, why don't we start talking about that?
Okay.
It's what you brought up before we started.
Oh yes, the idea of objective evil in a game and the usefulness it holds.
Okay. Yes. Well.
So, like, how do you mean like that? What do you
mean?
Like
objective evil is the idea that every goblin that you run across, every troll, every ogre, is evil.
Mm-hmm.
They have malicious intent. They're bad people, or they're bad monsters that have a bad god and a bad hair day, or a bad pebble in their shoe that pisses them off and just makes them all bad, indiscriminate.
And then
there's the idea of a subjective evil where it's not necessarily like I just want to just destroy and murder, but I have an actual goal that I'm willing to do bad things to achieve. And there's a difference between the two.
Being personally, I favor subjective evil over objective evil in my stories, mainly because the world is kind of a messed up place. I like to dribble a little bit of evil in everybody's actions.
See, and that tends to be where I'm at with it as well. I find that especially for my main antagonists, the big villains, if they're just evil for the sake of being evil, it kind of detracts from the anticipation and the realism, or rather the word I'm looking for.
No, realism is a good word. I mean, the world is a morally gray place. There is nobody who is truly, well, I don't want to say nobody because that's absolute, but
most people who are labeled quote unquote evil and stuff like that, they're just acting out of their interests, right? And so they hold their interests higher above than the interests of those around them. Now, that's not necessarily evil. That just means that they value the things that they do more than others.
Selfish.
Yes, evil people are just selfish, and that's not necessarily evil because everybody can be selfish. So you could, for a good example is Dr. Freeze. No.
Yes, Dr. Freeze I think is a great example. He's willing to go to great and extreme lengths for his frozen wife Nora and to cure her cancer. But he's willing to do horrible things to accomplish that.
Like be played by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, ouch.
But yeah, so it's a guy who's willing to sacrifice as much as he can in order to get what he wants. I think while we're on this topic about, describing evil and stuff like that, I think another interesting side tangent is talking about crazy people in movies and stories and stuff like that. And so one way I like to think about crazy people is that it's not 1 + 2 = fish. It's 1 + 2 = 12. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily random and sporadic. It's more of just a misapplication of knowledge and logic.
See, and that's also a very interesting character. In fact, a big character in media that I can think of that's kind of similar that way is Darth Vader, right? At least in the original trilogy. When we first see him,
You're talking about the one where he's a kid with Obi-Wan and they're doing all the tricks.
Stop it.
Yeah, I really like that.
The original trilogy.
The original trilogy, Darth Vader, straight up slaughtering rebels for no real reason,
now,
other than the fact that he's just a twisted, sadistic.
Excuse you? They are a part of the resistance, and they should be slaughtered.
As is tradition, of course.
As is tradition. There is 100% a reason.
But in the story, right? Vader's just a really evil dude. Like we don't get to go back and see why he becomes the person he is and how he develops his character for him not to be an imposing threat and interesting character. He was the big bad for like a decade or two before we even got the original trilogy to expand upon why he is the way he is. And he was still a great character. And I think the value that I hold for objective evil is it makes it so that when the players, right? So if you remember, Alex, the very first encounter I threw for you in the India campaign was when there was a woman and she was stuck to a cart, right?
Right.
And it was very obvious that the people that had put her there were bad, and you had no qualms about murdering the people who put her there because they were bad.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to do something like to humanize the goblins, it becomes harder for players to go out and do the things that adventurers do. Like it's hard, and that I've had that when I've been a player, right? So Kyle's run a game for me where there were these like lizard monsters and they had a clutch of eggs. And my character had a big problem with just slaughtering these clutch of eggs because like they're living beings or whatever. And just putting the generic evil face on them helps to get those sort of goals accomplished.
Well, yeah, there's this thing where sometimes you want to challenge your players or challenge your audience if you're like writing a book or something like that. But sometimes, people just want to kill orcs You know?
Yeah.
They just want to roll dice and kill orcs, and they don't want to be challenged morally, and they don't want to think about big topics.
I believe that objective evil is probably used best in symbolism. So
I can see where you're going with that.
Yeah.
I think that any time where have an idea of what evil is like the hand of evil, it's always objective evil. You don't like the orcs in Mordor are just evil hellspawn. They don't have feelings. No one feels bad when the orc gets killed, right?
Right. But, it's a matter of just like attaching that in order to better weave kind of like an allegory or a metaphor.
It's something that I've always thought about, like how deep do you want to get with your story, your campaign, and like it's something I like talk to my players board about beforehand. Like, do you guys just want to roll dice and kill monsters, or do you want to be challenged and thought of morally? The most recent campaign I did was new players, so I didn't ask them that because I was like, you're not going to know the answer once they become experienced enough.
Well, I think that's really great, guys. I think we really tackled some great stuff, but I think now is the time for us to move on to the main event, the meat and the potatoes.
What is the meat and potatoes?
Well, that's when we're going to start creating a world just based off of 5 random words generated by a random word generator. You guys ready? Because they're coming at you fast. They're coming at you lightning fast. They're coming out of nowhere. It's a vehicle, century, clean, avenue, fiber. What are you doing? Is that a stampede?
Chris is dead.
Chris was trampled mid-episode. I'm sorry, there's no more Chris.
Well, we have to get a new guest. Who can we get in the next 5 minutes?
Oh, I found this guy named Cross.
Oh, yes, it is Cross, the Chris replacement.
Yeah, that's right. The thing I hear is that you're Chris's twin brother, correct?
Yeah, something like that.
All right. Well, Cross, so, I'm not good with change, so I'm going to call you Chris, and we're going to continue on.
Thanks. Good to know my identity is irreplaceable as my twin brothers.
Correct.
So of those 5 words you've listed to me, vehicle is the one that's jumping out to me. It reminds me of like I could see like a death race type game, like where you could explore a fun mechanic with vehicles and building things and driving, like Mad Max style.
Right.
That would be really cool, actually. And they have in the newest D&D book they just released, they have vehicles they released that you could take and just change it a little bit, and there you go. Pop it in.
That'd be great for like stats for a game, but let's really dig into the world building. What does this world look like?
Right.
When I hear the word century, I instinctually want to century as in like old, like 100 years. I instinctually want to combine that with vehicle to get like some sort of like ancient.
Perhaps vehicles have been a huge part of culture, and maybe there's a big race that happens once every 100 years, and that decides the fate of a nation instead of like a war or something like that.
Wow.
Wars decided by vehicles?
By racing specifically?
By the race. Because think of it like maybe like in Hunger Games, right? Like where they have that one big event where instead of fighting all the time, they just have the districts, and then the districts compete for resources, and that's how the money gets doled out.
Right.
But this time, it's a race to the death.
A race to the death.
Or maybe not necessarily to the... I mean, if it's that...
No, it's to the death. You take this to the death. It's got to be to the death. No. Yeah, if they lose, they take them out back and they shoot them. I mean,
you just get killed on the track.
Well, so
that's true.
What if there was like what if it wasn't not necessarily always a race? I like to think, okay, I'm getting a lot of ideas really fast, okay? So I'm just going to start spitting them out. So what if like some like ancient alien race came down and was and said kind of enslaved the planet, and how they decided how things would run is like once a year they force the planet to engage in some random vehicle challenge.
So we're NASCAR for aliens?
NASCAR's for aliens. But it's like, it's not necessarily a race. It could be like a derby or something like that. And
like
it's just
monster truck rally.
So essentially there was like this big alien war and the aliens won. and the aliens just kind of did whatever they wanted to do with the planet, and now they just have us as kind of like
now it's the Daytona 500.
Yeah, it's the Daytona 500 track.
Man, that's pretty grim.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, and so it's like there's like constant like, what if it was like, like kind of, it just kind of became like a game show planet.
Well, it could be that this race of aliens, that's what they do. They go around to these planets and they force other races to be entertainment, essentially. And that's like what their channels are. Like if you were to change channels, it would just be these different channels of different planets doing different stuff. And Earth would be like a NASCAR channel.
So they're like the Predators from Alien versus Predator, just like subjugating these other races just because lol, it's fun, yo. Dance, puppet, dance.
Instead of for the hunt, it's for late night television.
That
sounds shockingly accurate.
All right,
shockingly close to real entertainment.
So these aliens, they came down. Why did they originally come? Was it just for entertainment? Or did they come for like something and then they take it and then it was like, well, we have this planet now?
I think it's just because we finally like, we put out signals now. We finally have satellites, so we just got on the radar. Beforehand we weren't on the radar. Now we're on the radar. We're in the big league. We were in the big leagues anyway, and then they showed up and they're like, you guys would be make left turns constantly.
Do we really question like the resources of a monkey in a circus when we make the monkey perform? No, we just want to see the monkey dance.
That's right. So
pretty dark, but yeah.
Would there be any resistances left?
I imagine so.
Yeah,
probably. Maybe they'll use the race as a way to like.
They're called.
I could see like a resistance faction using the public nature of the race to spread their idea of liberation or to of like awareness throughout the galaxy, like, hey, this is messed up and like help, or we're not going to sit down and take it anymore.
Guys, the race is called the Static Core, the rebellion. There
you go.
All right. Well, we can change that for later maybe, but I like just the Static Core because they fuzz out TVs.
Oh, they are TVs. They are just living static, living waves of beams of entertainment. They need to grow.
So these aliens, they just like they grow off of entertainment.
They are like they are the entertainment. So these aliens are meta beings that exist and feed off of like the idea of entertainment. Of one thing being done simply for the pleasure of it.
So they're kind of like collector beings.
How would that even function as a society? Because they'd be super hedonistic. Like, how would a society ever form?
Maybe it's
it's just endgame capitalism. Come on, guys.
What? Well,
they could be maybe it's like a hive mind race that just kind of like absorbs entertainment. Like entertainment is its nutrients.
I'm pretty sure there was a Jimmy Neutron episode that had aliens that also just loved entertainment and did that just for fun.
I mean, probably.
Yes, everything's been done. Originality is dead.
So let's shelve the alien talk right now. We can talk about like the specifics of them later. I want to talk about the planet right now. What does it look like? How is it divided up? Is it all conquered? Is some of it conquered?
I mean, I'd say if the aliens are strong enough to impose their will on an entire planet and force them all to race for their amusement, they probably just own the whole planet. Probably own the whole solar system.
Probably besides Australia. But other than that, they managed to get everything else on wraps.
I mean, they want to keep Australia pristine because that's just entertainment in its own right.
Yes. That in Florida have like a special free city type of deal. Oh yeah, you just continue living as if nothing changed.
Florida man.
Perfect as you are.
Exactly.
These vehicles look like, what powers them, or are they provided by the aliens, or would
they definitely would have given tech or something in order.
I imagine it's more of like a drop ship type of thing. like here's some tech, you know. You don't
you don't get
the good
just
stuff.
enough.
Just enough to be entertaining.
Well, like the aliens wouldn't even use anything close to like this anymore. This would be like for them almost ancient technology, but to us it's like, whoa.
They're beings of energy. They don't need physicality anymore.
Yeah. Yes.
They drop down these vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe it's just parts.
Maybe just pieces to make the vehicles, and then
it's up to like the individual racers to get this stuff.
Or maybe not even vehicle pieces. Maybe they just give us like the super fuel. Right. Just the best gas in the world, and that is enough of a revolution to like change the way transportation has been done.
Gas.
I kind of like the idea that they set up like a market, and they essentially sell like Lego parts for these vehicles.
Okay.
And then like the racers pick and choose the parts, and it's really easy to just like snap them together. So like even while they're racing or doing their demolition derbies or whatever, you could technically, using the broken parts around you, rebuild a bike real quick if they didn't kill you.
So it's like
so there's got to be a whole economy based off of like race parts, and it's got to span the whole galaxy, right? So there's probably like alien race part dealers from the entire sector just being like, yeah man, I got the hottest parts off Corinthian 9. This is gonna make your speedster like super gas.
Yeah, super
gas. I like the idea of like kind of the aliens, they got our planet, and as because they got our planet, they just kind of, this is just the racing central.
Why would they choose our planet as racing central though?
Maybe like
let's say there's something interesting. Maybe it doesn't have to necessarily be Earth, but what would be an interesting planet to race on? What's something that's unique that you wouldn't be able to find on another world? Maybe our biology or so like the forest is totally different and makes these massive huge trees that you have to drive through, or this massive underwater course, or maybe it's like a triathlon type deal.
Yeah, the planet just is like has the widest range of like species and stuff like that. Like maybe they just terraformed a planet and designed it for racing and like vehicles.
What you could do is that, since you talked about like end stage capitalism, that this would kind of symbolize, is that maybe this was just bought. Our planet was bought. Yeah. And is now being terraformed to look like the ideal racing world.
Yeah, man, I think that would totally fit the callous nature of the aliens and the society and the hedonistic nature that they live in. And it also, and the thing I really like about it is it lets the players can be like a part of resistance, and then so obviously there's the early game where they're just fiddling around with cars and trying to make that work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the mid part of the game where they finally have a mastery of their own vehicle and are taking part of the big races. And then you can get all the way up to the end game where they're a part of an actual resistance. Like, I think it scales well throughout all stages of a game.
Well, like I said last time, I'd like this to be a little bit more focused on world building. That's all. Those are all good thoughts, and we can definitely apply those to later episodes of this world.
I also just brought that up because I like the idea of like a bunch of people like doing a race through like the Grand Canyon. Like they take the Grand Canyon
mm-hmm.
and they just maximized it, like boosted it up to 1,000%, and now you're just racing through the Grand Canyon
because we got to get those views. We got to get those watches.
Exactly. We got to get those.
Yeah, views. Every week you'd have a leg. You could have a leg of a race in like a totally
Niagara Falls.
Niagara Falls. Just you got to gap pyramid to pyramid as part of the Desert Egypt race. You gotta like.
Amazon River. You gotta actually turn your vehicle into like a boat and race through the Amazon River.
I like to imagine that
mountains, man.
In the, like you know, in the Hunger Games, they had those guys just watching, and they would like throw things in at live in order to spice up the race. So the aliens just like they tunneled into the planet to just kind of like mess with the hardware, so they can just do crazy things like upswell gravity or cause earthquakes and cause tornadoes and stuff like that. So they just re-engineered the environment of the planet to make the races and events more interesting.
I like that a lot because it also that so if you establish that as like a canon thing that can exist, it allows you as the dungeon master to Deus Ex Machina if things get way too out of whack, or if the players put themselves in such a hole that they could never realistically get out of themselves. Hey, a nice benefactor can come along, give them a thing, so because they're the underdog, to really mix up the race and make it more interesting. Then it doesn't feel like, oh, super god's throwing me a bone. It feels like, oh, I'm a part of this world and there are people watching me and who care about what I'm doing.
I can't remember what their reason in Hunger Games were for the benefactors. But what would their reason be?
It was a annual reminder to not rebel.
Well, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, what is the purpose of the benefactors trying to get any one person to win?
Gambling?
Like, and I mean in this world that we're creating, like, why would these aliens who are just watching this for pure entertainment purposes care about who wins the race?
You got to
raise. They want the race to be interesting.
Oh, wait, no. It would be actually the people who are selling the parts, because we established there'd be this this market for these race parts.
Yeah,
and like they would get a boost in sales if the person who wins won on their race parts, right?
And say there's not just, maybe it's not just humans or whatever local race of the planet that's participating in the race. Maybe there's big hotshot racers from other planets that come in and champion their worlds, right?
Right.
So then that's a huge, like, these other super meta aliens are so strong, if they can control one race, there's no reason they can't control the others.
Right.
And then it gives reason for these like totally unique characters and totally unique designs to come in and have a horse in the race, if you will, have a reason to race hard and to be willing to fight and die for their stuff.
What if, theoretically, I'm tossing this idea out here. What if the human race is already dead? And they just re-engineered the planet to be a racetrack, and now the static core just dumps racers in onto the planet. It's like, okay, here, entertain us.
That would make sense, because they would have like probably conquered the planet then just started from scratch.
Right.
Yeah, just make it perfect easier for them.
Just like amp up like the lethality of animals and just like throw on alien animals so that like the Earth is in the same spot, but everything is just like set to the max.
Right, because they had to buy the territory. But, now that they have it, it's like, well, this planet kind of sucks, but we like the idea of it. So we'll take it, kill everything on it, notch it up to 1,000.
Well, we'll sit here, we'll break down that wall, we'll open it up to a more open floor plan.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. I like to imagine that they're constantly like surveilling and watching, but they're surveilling and watching the internal politics of like the different aliens, and they encourage them to cheat and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, again, they're super realistic. That's interesting. Exactly. It's entertaining. It's interesting.
They would have no honor, so there would be, to them, the concept of cheating wouldn't even be wrong. That would just be a part of the game.
I feel like they would also have arbitrary rules that they would enforce so long as it was entertaining, and you could break the rules if you kept it entertaining. Like if the racers just decide to get out of their cars and start fighting, they might allow it for a little while. But if that happens every race, then they might be like, okay, no, you're going to actually do the thing we tell you. We're going to put you on this giant slope, and if you don't go down it, you'll just die.
Right.
Or they'll put them on like a giant active volcano with lava behind them. It's like, okay, get going.
I like this planet. I like this world. I think eventually I want to fill out the solar system and really get like the different races and stuff like that, because I don't think I want this to be the entire concept of this existence. You get what I'm saying?
Do we want to talk about what our big bad is like, or what our heroes might be like, or what goals our heroes might have?
That's probably like further down, right? Probably further later episodes.
I say let's roll another 5 words and see what we get for maybe an alien planet. Like, okay. And we can decide on what that alien planet is. Next 5 words are production, loop, amber, develop, fog.
Production, so like maybe a all mechanical planet.
Maybe that's the planet where they make the
a
parts.
manufactured. What we were talking about, manufactured world, like maybe like a Death Star or an apocalypse type, super industrialized turbo world.
Okay.
And that could have been like maybe the world that the previous annual race was held on, or something like that.
Like
Yeah.
Oh.
Like maybe as the races go on and like these race centers become these super industrialized and super super, I don't know, just mechas or areas where commerce has to come in just because of how big these intergalactic races are, and that just shapes the world as more and more people come and bring their stuff and try and hawk their equipment.
Well, I that mechanical idea, I think that's great. I think we can focus on that, but I just want to spit this out here.
Well, there's going to be multiple worlds, right?
Right.
Multiple planets in the solar system. So if you want to bring up a different, feel free.
All right. I was thinking like loop. Maybe this competition game thing is just kind of like the cyclical thing that keeps going on. And what happens is that they jack up Earth plus a planet so much that eventually it just kind of destroys it, and when it's destroyed they just kind of find another planet to Earth plus and do another game show or another type of thing.
Absolutely. When you're constantly raising the stakes, eventually it's got to destabilize and then it will all fall apart. But if it's not their world, or they don't even care about the concept of a world, what's it mean to them?
Right. I was thinking like maybe there's people that are just living on like the debris of that former planet that exploded.
No, absolutely. Like the aliens that are the races that are indigenous to that island, they don't just or the indigenous to that world don't just disappear once the aliens are through with it.
You would assume they died, right? Wouldn't it be like a cleanse and then move on? Or is it like they just don't care? They don't think anyone would ever become a threat, and it would just be...
I think they just don't care.
It's too boring to even worry.
It's beneath them.
It's beneath them. Maybe those races are now trying to win this, because if they win, then maybe they get a new world.
Ooh, I like that a lot.
Gosh, or like that's really good entertainment for them too, because it means like, obviously the viewers at home would all be like, do you remember the Cromulans, or the Cromulans, and we played on their world? Well, they're back.
And they're hungry for victory and a chance at regaining their world's once magnificent rainforest.
Exactly. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. And so it's just like I like to imagine like the winner of the race, the static core just kind of grants like it's fate core. They just kind of grant them a wish, like whatever you want, we can give it to you, so long as it meets our rules of entertainment and stuff like that. And so that's why people are fighting so desperately for it, because some of them are fighting like, no, listen, my planet is gone. We need a new place.
I need this world.
Some of them are literally fighting to restore their species, bring it back from the brink of extinction.
And some of them are just like, nah, I'm here for the money. Give me them greenbacks.
That's great, and I think that's really cool because it lets the it goes back to that objective versus subjective evil. If you have your players or have a position in this race, and they're racing against the guy who's literally just trying to restore his species back to like fruition, are your methods, are your reasons for winning the race really more valid than his? Is he really a bad guy, an enemy?
You got to assume that most of the people in this race are going to be aliens who had their planets destroyed, who are literally trying to either bring their race back from extinction. Maybe you even throw one in there who is the last. They're the last of their kind. And the wish they're going to ask for, can you bring back my species in my homeworld? And of course, the people are like, sure, if you win, if you're entertaining enough.
Yeah. Here we are now. Entertain us.
There's also got to be races in there, like you said, that are just in it for the money. So maybe not every species that's involved in this race had their homeworld destroyed. Maybe their homeworld was just uninteresting, or their species was just warlike or nomadic even, and they don't really care. They're just in it for the power that they could gain to further advance their own race, and they don't really care about what happens to the other ones.
Yeah, there's probably, or like races that were around when the static core first kind of developed. So they're on like not the same power level, but strong enough that if the static core tried anything, they might actually be able to put up some sort of fight. So it's not the static core is scared of them. They're just,
it's kind of like an alliance. And so I like to imagine that the static core they're not like gods here. Like they're not like, whoa, I can do anything. It's like they're just so technologically advanced. Like they just kind of a monopoly on technology.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're able to do this kind of thing.
They mass develop technology because they're like, the best way to have the most fun is to have the most technology.
That's right. How are people going to see our show if we can't beam it right into their brain?
Directly into their thought vessels.
Ads included. What if the vehicles and some people were sponsored?
Oh yeah, of course.
Absolutely got to be sponsored, dude. Yeah. So there's got to be also races that are maybe have worlds that aren't interesting, that are just in there to hawk their stuff and make money, right?
Right.
Not even have a horse in the race. They just play all of the sides because it's convenient.
Yeah.
I know this is a silly idea, but I think it would be hilarious if you had one race car that was sponsored by an American, or like, some sort of
a race car by Google.
Earth. Yeah, well, I was thinking more like there was we find out like there's a race car by like Pepsi, and you find out that Pepsi is actually an alien drink that discovered Earth long ago and just implanted a few.
Oh, that's
and
great.
so Pepsi's just intergalactic through the universe.
That's right.
Or whatever. It doesn't have to be Pepsi. Coke or Pizza Hut or something.
Now Earth flavored.
Yeah, exactly.
Now with the added flavor of Earth's glaciers.
That's right. That sounds rad. At first I was like, I'm not sure if I like this world, but now I'm really enjoying like the idea of like this super commercialized universe where it's just the static core and they're like pumping. It was like, hey, new Mountain Dew X.
Yeah, I think that I just think that it opens up for a lot of different possibilities, and that you can play with alliances between the different races and between the races and the players. You can play with corporations. You can play with all sorts of big ideas and kind of bring them. You can take like you were saying, Alex, could bring these really big meta ideas and boil it down in such a way that it's just a fun way to roll dice and race cars, right?
Right. Roll dice and
really
race cars.
Well,
not really cars at this point. It's yeah.
If it can move on the X and Y plane, then it's allowed in the race.
I think that no flying would have to be like part of the rules, right?
No, flying's allowed. The air's just dangerous.
Yeah, it would 100% be allowed because it would be entertaining.
Well, no, right? That's the thing, though, right? Yeah. Like, what's more entertaining? Watching. Like, maybe there's segments of the race where you can fly, but there's got to be points where no, if your vehicle isn't touching the water, you get blown up. You get shot. You get shot by these big, huge auto turrets that are monitoring the race. And if you cheat, or if you break that rule, they just attack you. Maybe you can get away with it, but maybe not.
I like to imagine that what they do, they don't do hey, we'll blow up your car. What if they did well, we don't really want you to fly in this section of the race, so we're just going to put giant man-eating pterodactyls in the sky.
Well, yeah, because they want to make it where that would be boring to them if they just put auto turrets that shot you. So they would have things that would almost guarantee your death, but would be exciting.
Yeah.
And if you did manage to survive, like you said, Chris, then, well, it was entertaining, so they don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congrats.
You survived.
Yeah.
You made it through the 60 man-eating pterodactyls of death.
Yeah. I think that probably makes more sense for them, would be like, because again, we went over, they don't care about cheating. So it's like, yeah, you can fly, but if we don't want you to fly, then you better be prepared for some messed up stuff to happen.
Kind of like
gotta be consequences.
The Quantum Ogre.
Yeah.
Yes.
All
No
right.
matter what, you have to go through the door and fight the ogre.
We're moving on. So, you guys see anything good? You've enjoyed any media recently?
Let's think here. I think the biggest.
Oh wait, hold on. I think you're being stampeded. Wait, go ahead. Try again.
Is that better?
Yeah.
So I've been watching some there's some D&D YouTubers that I've been watching. A big favorite is mine is Drunkens and Dragons. Kind of this old guy who's just like talks about the way he builds a world and builds an encounter, which I find to be kind of interesting. As far as like stuff for inspiration for my own world that isn't directly related to game mastery, I watched Joker recently, and I really liked the way that the way the character is portrayed as evil, very much unforgivable, but you can kind of see into the past as to why that might be, or what shapes that kind of a person. Right. And I think I want to use that sort of thing for backstories of my own villains, of my own antagonists, if you will, not necessarily villains.
I kind of like on how he's not very smart in the movie. And
yeah, he's
the reasoning why I like that is because I think the idea of Batman being the world's greatest detective, not being able to like solve everything that comes by, I think the reason why Joker can stay ahead of him is because he's just random, completely right. You can't predict what's going to happen next, and I feel like that kind of just fuels into that with him not being very smart.
The only thing you can predict is that he'll be unpredictable.
That's right. How about you? You watch anything good, Levi?
I mean, I'm a busy man. Not really. I watch a lot. It's a D&D podcast, which I know isn't outside of the D&D media, but it's called Dimension 20. Released their newest series called Tiny Thieves, where they play as little itty bitty thieves that are trying to steal little itty bitty stuff, and it's pretty good.
That sounds hilarious.
Yeah, it is. It was hilarious, and the final episode of it just went live, so I gotta finish that, watch it all. And
do you guys use music when you world build to like set a tone or develop a theme or an idea?
I listen to music and sometimes world build off of that music.
I sit in silence with the lights off.
You see, one of my favorite encounters that I've built, but I haven't yet had the opportunity to play, is based off of like a metal album from Igor, and it's just this very beautiful female voice, like singing in like church choir or whatever, that is then immediately paralleled or rather contrasted with this aggressive and dark and sinister beat behind it and bass behind it, with this high-pitched violin that screeches over the track. And it just made me it reminded me of like a villain from Dark Souls, and I made an entire encounter just off of the sound of that voice, of what would it take to make a normal beautiful voice like that, to distort it and surround it with that ugliness, and what that would look like.
Have you ever heard of Halo 2's soundtrack, Peril? Specifically, Peril.
I've played Halo 2 on Legendary, so I know the Halo, but that particular track doesn't sound familiar to me. The name of it, at least.
We were listening the last time we were playing D&D, or not the last time, sorry. This happened months ago. We were listening to soundtrack, and my friend Nixon what he would do is he would take this hag miniature we had, and he'd make it slowly advance into the middle of a combat encounter we were doing, and he named the hag Matilda. And so what Matilda does is she slowly comes for a character, grabs a character, and then starts pulling away. And he does it very slowly. And if Matilda makes it out of the combat with your character, you die. You stop existing. And we will play, when Nick decides to do this, we will play the Halo 2 soundtrack, Peril, just on repeat. And that is Matilda's theme song. And that's the closest thing I have as a connection of like when I use music for building an encounter.
That sounds really awesome.
It's terrifying.
I bet.
It's absolutely terrifying because, I mean, you can move your character and move out of the way and stuff like that, but you know, Matilda will then just go for whatever was closest next, and sure, that may be an enemy, but it's not always. It's not always.
I think that using sound to develop a sense of theme in a game is really important. Like when I was running one of your games, Alex, I liked to bring music, not necessarily that was auditorily that was like pleasing to listen to, but would really set the theme of what it was I was trying to portray. Like when you were in the haunted cemetery, I played some really kind of disharmonious and uncomfortable music to set the theme that the place that you're entering was evil and uncomfortable, and that you were liberating it from that.
Alex would usually just play 70s rock.
I do. I most of the time just put on 70s rock and then role play in like a gnomish tavern or something like that.
I mean, 70s rock is pretty great, my man. Like that's a pretty triumphant theme right there. If you're kicking orcs' ass.
That's right.
I don't agree. I feel like it, and this is a personal thing, but it doesn't get me into the fantasy setting. It worked really well when we were doing that world that was set in the 80s because it made a lot of sense.
That certainly helps. But I like to do that. I like to throw in some music. Personally, though, I have a soft spot for 70s rock, and so if I'm feeling it that night, then we're listening to 70s rock that night.
Also, Alex, is there any media else that you have listened to recently?
I've been playing XCOM 2 pretty frequently right now, and I like it. It's really reminiscent to like D&D combat, to where you can like suspend an action to attack during an opponent's turn. The main issue, though, is that I'm terrible at it.
Of course.
I name all of the people and design them after my friends, and so I have to constantly watch all of my friends die before me.
Have you ever played Darkest Dungeon?
Yeah, I do that in that one as well.
Yep.
I've filled the graves with Chris's and Levi's.
No, I mean, thank you. I'm honored, but also actually, you know what? That's good incentive to keep them alive, right?
It is good incentive, but every time I watch them die, I start to cry a little bit inside.
Oh, it's so sweet.
Yeah, well. Anyways, now what are some other sources to learn about world building? Do you got one, Chris?
Let's see here. So there's Drunkens and Dragons, which I had said. There's Pruitt and what's his name off of WebDM.
You don't need to fire off a giant list. We do this every week.
Well,
that was Alex's way of saying shut the fuck up.
Okay. Either of those two I like. I find their content to be interesting.
What was it? Pruitt?
It's WebDM.
Yeah, WebDM.
WebDM. Okay.
Yeah, he was naming the specific people on the show, but you would just look up WebDM.
Okay.
Look up WebDM. They're pretty cool guys. They like to talk about world building, and it's something you can take not just in the context of D&D. You can take some of the content and apply it to other things.
Yeah, they actually, I think, did an episode on building better villains. I think I might be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure they did. They built a video about making villains who have arcs or moral subjectivity. So,
all right, great, cool. So I think that about wraps it up. You can contact the show at alexorangesoda at outlook.com. You can also check me out on my DVR or on Facebook. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I suppose you guys don't want to plug anything.
No. Thanks for having me on the show, though. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it was fun having you, Chris. When we finally could get a word in edgewise.
Oh, nice. I'd love to come back. This was fun.
Well, I actually do have something that I think is really important for all of our listeners.
Right.
On Netflix about a week ago.
Right.
A very important documentary was released about Betty White, and I encourage everyone to go watch it.
So you decided to put that into closing instead of the part where we're plugging other things?
Well, no, because this is more important.
So. This is more important.
the most important.
All right,
yes.
You heard it right here. Stop watching this. Don't listen to this again. Go watch Betty White.
It's a documentary on Netflix.
Watch the documentary on Netflix. That's the one thing you should take away from us talking right here is watch Betty White. Watch Golden Girls. Watch it all.
Yeah.
All right. That's it.